Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. I'm just going to talk about in this video about the process that happens within a session, right? Like for example, like this video I'm doing right now. A majority of my sessions are done distantly, right? Through Skype, through WhatsApp, Messenger. And we're doing a video call, right? I get a few people locally, but majority, probably about 95% are all overseas. So we do it all distance. Healing. And so essentially, we're talking, I'm seeing the human, right? The client, that's the human, and they're looking back at me as Chris, the human as well, right? So my high consciousness would call it a human, right? Because you've got to understand that what we perceive as a human body is very determined on, what we can see, right? And we know that our sight, human sight, is not even close to 1% of what can be seen as part of the electromagnetic spectrum of light. So it's part of our limitation, right? So understand that what we see, right, which is 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, so such a sliver of the bigger picture, is that's we're only seeing a representation of that thing. That is not even 1%. Okay, and this is kind of how we then define that this is a body, right? Because this is what we're using our eyes to perceive it and as a physical body, right? So my high consciousness calls it an interface, right? Which is a term quite often coined with a computer, right? And, it's a medium, a conduit for intelligence to extend its will through. That's what the body is, okay? And its greater sense of what its purpose, right? So how I get guidance during sessions, right, to work on those big things, right, to see the bigger picture, not only to actually help that person healing their issue, but give them the greater insights into why they're experiencing what they're experiencing, and also give them empowerment into how they can now these insights that they can use as part of their life, right, to change their perspective, change, this experience. Because a lot of the times, if we continue just to use, as we're taught as the human, what we see and couple it up with a thought process, that process is never going to give you the greater insight into the bigger picture. And because that wouldn't be an issue if we were just here as observants or participants, right, that we don't have an effect on what's happening outside of us, but we do. This is the thing. We're creators. We create reality. We create our experience of reality. So the way that we perceive something is everything. Because the way we perceive something, we invest our energy into making it so. Right? And that what you perceive, because it's not taking in the bigger picture, the true, authentic representation of that thing, we could be forging a path or forming a creation that is not good for us, and it's coming from us, right? So we'd see that as a sabotaging effect or way, right? Because we're misunderstanding what we're perceiving, right? And what we're perhaps going through and what we're experiencing. So this is really important stuff, right? So a lot of the stuff I talk within a session, you need to be taking that on board, right? Because for me, that is more of the healing than actually the clearing work itself, right? The clearing work opens the doors, but really the true mastery is to keep the doors open. And that's going to be up to you, right, as the client. So when I'm getting all this, getting channeled, right, getting the answers coming down on my chart here, right, to know what we need to look into, to kind of take the pieces of the puzzle that my client has brought to me at the start of the session to put it all together so we can see the bigger picture. Not just me, but the client as well. Because the client, that will shift and change the way that they perceive things, right? Their perspective, which is going to be a big part in how they heal and get to a resolution in their issue, right? To the outcome that they want, right? Which we would say is your heart's desires, right? And there's a big hint with that. If we want our heart's desires, we need to allow the heart to lead it. And the biggest clearing we're having to do for clients at the moment is to open their heart, because they've got a closed off heart, right? So the processes that we're being taught as the human is clearly showing that it's not putting the odds in our favor, it's putting the odds against us, right? That's why we're having to open the heart. Okay, so when I'm getting all this information, I'm dialing into my soul, my consciousness that exists outside of this plane. Okay, which is really me. That's my authenticity. That's my authentic self. The human is just what I've been taught to be, right? Which is our conditioned self. So hence, that's what I mean by if we just continue just to go by what we see in a thought process, we're always going to give a conditional perspective, right? We're going to have to depend on what we were taught by others around us and how we perceive what we're going to perceive, right? So when we connect into our soul consciousness, it allows us to no longer be limited by what we see and what we think and those sorts of things. So we can gain that access to see the bigger picture, right? To provide insight that observation and thought process is not providing, right? As the human, the way we're being taught, conditioned to be. So I'll dial into my soul, and then my soul then dials into my client's soul. This is why you don't have to be sitting right next to me. I can work on it on anybody. It doesn't matter where you are globally, right? Where the distance comes into play. Because the majority of people generally conceive distance, time, these things as limitations. Well, when you dial into your soul, and then that soul's connecting to that person's soul, there is no limitation there. Because the limitation is the human, the way the human's been taught, right? This is why generally as the human, we overcomplicate things. So we make it harder. As I said before, we put the odds against us instead of the odds in our favor. Right? So the ultimate goal, right, in regards to a session is to match that connection that's happening from my soul to my client's soul, right? That's happening outside this plane, to be present here on this plane, what people would perceive as the physical plane, okay, when I'm connecting with them, right? Right? And when we enable that connection, it's amazing that, the things that come through me are directly connected to how the client perceives it as well, right? Because now we're having a soul-to-soul connection, not the human-to-human condition. So it's not a conditioned viewpoint or connection, it's an authentic one, okay? Right? So it's now present here, okay? Now this is why we have to open that client's heart, because the heart is the seat of the soul, right? This is why a majority of humans find it hard to connect with other humans, right? They get a dog or a cat, and they have the greatest connection they ever can have in that animal, right? Why is that? Because all of a sudden it's a feel connection, it's a heart-to-heart connection, a soul-to-soul connection with that canine, with that feline, with that animal, because that animal doesn't speak the same tongue as you do, right? It's not requiring a thought process. It's feel, right? And when I'm in a session and I'm getting into the space, right, which is like a meditative space when I'm dowsing in front of my charts, there's no thinking involved in that. That's why it's so effortless. Everything's effortless when we're in the heart. And when we are guided through heart feel instead of mind thought. Because the realization is when we're in mind thought as the human, the way we're being taught to be a thinker, we make things difficult. We make things over complicated than it needs to be. So really the biggest block obstruction is ourselves with an embodiment of human identity and following a mind thought pathway. Right? The heart is where it's at. So that we'd call that connection with that canine, with that feline, unconditional love. Right? Because remember, the human, you, through mind thought, that is the conditioned self. So hence, every perspective as the human is a conditioned perspective, not an authentic one. So we see love in a conditioned way, which is not true love. It's not authentic love. So when we connect with the animal, we were feeling, because the animal doesn't know what you're saying, but it can feel what you're saying. It feels the love from you. Because love is a feeling. Love's not thought. That is what we call unconditional love. Okay? Right? A soul-to-soul connection, a heart-to-heart connection, which really is the true essence of what people deem as telepathy. It's not brain to brain or mind to mind. That's the disconnection. That's mind, thought, human, where we disconnect. No, it's heart to heart. Right? Where we connect from one person's expansion to the other, or one person's authenticity to the other. Where there's no hidden agendas, right? It's just love. Because at a soul level, you are love. This is the thing. You know, out of mind, thought, pathway, being the human, we've been so hoodwinked that for our lifetime, we go searching and seeking because our perspective becomes externalized. So we believe that everything that we need is out there. It's not here. We never look within, right? There's a beautiful expression that humans scratch the surface. They don't think to go within, where our true expansion exists, where the answers exist. Okay. So when our perspective becomes externalized as the human, we believe that we lack, right? The mentality of lack that we embody. We believe that we need love and connection from another person. That's where it comes from. No. Love originates within each one of you. Because at the soul level, the soul doesn't know how to love. The soul is love. Right? Love is a feeling, and your soul connects and communicates to you through feel. So what's the common denominator there? Feel. Soul, love, that. So at the soul level, you are love. You already have the baseline that you have a connection or love for self. Okay, and this is what's often missing for people, and this is why people become dependent on things outside of them to fill the voids that they can't fill themselves. Because you've been taught that way. Okay? So with all this information I'm saying, can you imagine how